how's it going out there? Dr. Mouth here. Wow, you know, getting ready for another edition of Slip Through the Cracks. I got a great one for you today, ladies and gentlemen. And, you know, of course, to do these videos, you have to prep you. And, you know, even though you know the record well, you always, I like to always listen to it right before I do these little video documentaries for you. So it's just actually still playing on in the background. I don't know if you can hear it or not. You're going to hear it. Let me tell you, you're going to hear it. And, yeah, just a unique record and meets so much of my criteria. It's crazy and unique. I found it while thrifting. I found it at a Goodwill, which I always love when it comes to records because you never know what you're going to find. And they are Canadian. They are Canadian as well. But it's a very unique kind of Canadian approach here, ladies and gentlemen. A very unique Canadian genre, I would say. Why, you know, prog rock was very popular in the 70s. There's no doubt about it, especially in England and Europe and, you know, the rest of Europe. A lot of great prog bands out of that whole area. Some from Canada, some from the States. But these ones, we're talking strictly Quebec here, ladies and gentlemen. Quebec prog rock. And there's just something about the way the Quebecois approached prog rock in the 70s. Certainly you hear the influences of the other bands, the British bands, the European bands, but they have their own unique spin on it and their own way of interpreting it, and a lot of it is really super fantastic. And, you know, if it had been promoted alongside, say, like Deep Purple or Uriah Heep or Pink Floyd or Atomic Rooster, it would be just as popular as any of those bands because musically it's great. I don't know if it's the language barrier that was the issue. Personally, I don't mind if I don't understand the lyrics. They printed them all in the album anyways in French, so you can eventually figure out the lyrics if you want. But a super great, amazing prog rock band. I mean, here, I'll show you some of the bands, because there are so many of them. Like, there was Harmonium. This is their album, The Five Seasons, which is kind of like almost mellow, kind of psych prog, weird, maybe what them literary guys call the acid folk, maybe. What great cover, man. Great friggin' psychedelic cover artwork with the flying female butterflies here. So that's a cool one. Here's another one, Le Ton. It's much more of kind of a rocking thing, but a pretty crazy cover there on that one. I like that. And that's got the gatefold, of course, with the band. See, and this, believe it or not, this was another thrift store find, this one. In the city of Toronto, you'd be amazed how many records you can get from different ethnicities when it comes to old school rock and that. I have tons, and almost all of them are from thrift stores. Here's Morse Code. This is another one from Quebec. And this is La Marche des Hommes for this one, The March of the Men. What better title for a prog rock album than The March of the Men? Here's Offenbach. They had all kinds of crazy stages. This record, they almost sound like Deep Purple, but they had some super proggy moments as well. They have a live album from earlier in their career that's pretty amazing. They were a cool band. And we also have Les Skyliners. Yeah, they're from Quebec, but they're not prog rock. This is cool. This is surf music from Quebec, but that's a whole other show. How did that get in there? I gotta check these records more before I start these up. Oh, and to check this out, just to show you how popular Quebec prog rock was. Look at this. This is like a K-Tel style record, a compilation of just Quebecois prog rock. It's great there. It's got some of the names right on the front there. Les Tomps are on there. Offenbach are on there. And you also have the Octobre are on here as well. And Contraction are on here as well. So that was a good one as well. I thought I had a couple others I wanted to show you, but I guess that's it, because you know what? Why fiddle around? It's time to get to the main event, ladies and gentlemen. This is my favorite Quebec prog rock record. This band has a very short history in the overall period, though. They started in 1969. They're called Dionysos. And they started in 1969. They did a single, 45, was called Susie. And then in 1971, they did this album, Le Grand Jeu. And then in 1972, they did the album that I'm going to tell you about, which right here is called Le Prince Croule, right here. And we'll look into it in that. They did that in 1972. They stayed together until 74, playing live and stuff. They broke up. They got back together, though, 2 years later in 76, and they did another album called Change d'Adresse. And that was it. They broke up shortly after that again. And I think there was a reunion version at some point. But the band leader, his name was Paul-Andre Thilbert. He led the band, so he's the prominent presence. But amazing stuff, man. The two, I don't really know the third album they did in '76. I've never heard it. But the first two albums I'm familiar with, and they're very, very great. And they're milestones in the history of prog rock as far as I'm concerned. They're totally amazing. So let's look at this here. Le Prince Croule. And apparently, these guys wrote in a particular style. Like, they used a particular type of French street slang called joual. And I'm sorry, I'm unfamiliar with it. I don't know that much about it. But apparently they adapted it, and that was how they wrote, and that's the style that the record is written in. Now, I got to talk about the cover before we get to some music, because, okay, as I mentioned, I found this in a thrift store, right? And it's like, what do you see when you look at this album cover? Here, I'll unfold the whole thing. Like, what do you see going on here? Like, I don't know. I was really confused when I saw this record. I'm like, it's French title, obviously. Is it a ballet record? Is it some sort of art record? Is it a classical record? Like, I was very confused. And when I found it in the Goodwill, it had the shrink wrap was still on it, right? The album had been opened on the side to be played, but they never took the shrink wrap off. And I could tell from looking at the top here that it was gatefold, that it opened up, and I thought, wow, I have to see this. So I took the shrink wrap off it, and I opened it up, and I was like, oh, yeah, now we're looking good here. Check these guys out here. There's a picture of the band, and they've got the classic kind of psychedelic thing back there to do the black-white negative image thing. They're all posing there on their hippie Volkswagen. So right away, I'm looking at this, and also, the other dead giveaway, the links of some of the songs. If you look at this up here where it's got the song titles in that, you know, the title track, Le Prince Croule, 13 minutes long. So I'm kind of like, yeah, I think I will take a chance on this record. So I did, and I brought it home, and absolutely blown away. There's nothing bad on it as far as I'm concerned. It goes from crunchingly heavy to proggy all over the place, spacey, psychedelic. Side one, to me, almost seems to be more of the crunchy. The first two songs are very heavy and crunchy. And then the last two, and I'm going to play you the epic title track. I'm only going to play two tracks, actually, because the title track is a staggering almost 14 minutes long. But you'll want to hear the whole thing in its entirety. And so what I'm going to basically do is I'm going to just bracket the album on this one. I'm going to play the first track, and I'm going to play the last track. And the first track is called Livre du Prince, which apparently translates as Survey of the Prince. So I have a feeling it's a concept record. And again, I don't know French well enough to be able to figure that out. But this is probably the opening song establishing the prince, the survey of the prince. Maybe looking over his kingdom or something of his domain. I don't know. And then I'm going to play the very last track, and but we'll play this one first, Livre du Prince. It's really good. This is heavy. This is, you know, I found this record at the Goodwill. I'm definitely interested in it. It looks really cool. The record was also in fairly good shape too. And I get it home and I drop the needle, side one, track one, and this is what we heard. Get ready to be rocked heavy, ladies and gentlemen, in the thunder of Dionysos and Livre du Prince.
comme on pleure.
How's that for some, clubbering, thundering, that old school, early 70s, the doom and gloom kind of metal, the Black Sabbath style, the heaviness, the Uriah Heep, the Deep Purple. Love that track. Love that track. And the very next track after that is equally heavy. It's a heavy one as well. But we're going to jump to the very end of the record here because it's a long piece, ladies and gentlemen, and I really want to encourage you to listen to the whole thing. So I don't want to make the show staggeringly long, and I'm just up here going, yes, blah blah, the juxtaposition of the classical elements of this theatrical masterpiece, blah 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 blah. Don't want to be doing any of that kind of silliness, right? So what we're gonna do here is get right into it and hear the epic of the album, Le Prince Croule. It's amazing, 14 minutes long. I know you're going to enjoy it. It'll remind you, I'm sure, of lots of different bands. It definitely makes me think of different bands. But, a little Pink Floyd, a little Deep Purple. It's going to be great. You're going to love it. So, in fact, I won't even come back and bother you at the end because you know what? After 14 minutes of this song, your mind's going to be blown. You're not going to love. You're going to want to relax and contemplate what you heard. You're not going to want to go back and go, oh, God, I don't want to listen to him talk anymore. So I'm out of here. Dr. Mouth. Check me out on Instagram. It's Dr. Mouth. Check me out on Sunday night's main event. If you're a wrestling fan, you can check out the Facebook page on that. Check out my surf band, the Cliff Divers. We got a Facebook page happening there. And if you want to see more of these crazy videos, you can just subscribe with the little button at the bottom. And one other thing, I always forget to say this every time I make one of these videos. Muchos gracias, muchacho, to Mr. Kevin McDonald for helping edit these and putting it all together. I get to just rant and rave, and he puts it all together, and I think he does a great job every time. So kudos to you, brother. All right, that's enough. Let's go. Dionysos, la Prince Croule.